It looks like people are saying yes, they can hear me, still hear me, so I appreciate that. Just a few moments or bits of housekeeping before we start today's presentation. First, we recognize people may not be able to attend from your organization, so we will be recording this event, and we'll have a recorded version of this up on our YouTube page. But if anyone specifically wants that link sent to them directly, we typically do, but if there's somebody who wants it expeditiously, we can try and get that to you sooner. But this is being recorded just as a bit of an FYI. Secondly, there is a questions. We want this to be interactive and the dialogue to kind of respond dynamically. So there will be points for questions throughout as well at the end. This presentation will not take the full hour, so that we'll have some time there at the end, some buffer there for people to be able to interact and engage as it goes. So please use either the chat box or the question box to send questions to me, and I can then facilitate those to the host. And then lastly, we typically, to try and add value to these at the end, present you with a survey that will be emailed to your email addresses, the one you use to register for this webinar. And that survey helps us just improve our program offering, as well as gives us insights as to different webinars that you would like to see throughout the year. So we're just soliciting for feedback on that. Hope that you have some time to be able to provide that to us so we can just improve our overall programming and better serve you as our customers. So having said that, I would like to kick it over to our host today, or our presenter today rather. Dave, are you on, and can you hear me okay?
I am. Can you hear me all right, Carl?
You sound great. Yep, I
Perfect.
hear you. Perfect.
All right, we'll take it away then. Appreciate the introduction there, Carl, and just kind of to briefly introduce myself for those of you on the line here that haven't had the chance to meet in the past. My name is Dave Dozer. I'm a senior business systems consultant here with Algorithm, and prior to this life, I've got some history with Exact and Macola. For a couple of years, I served as the product manager on the Macola 10 product line, and prior to that, did a stint as a consultant for Macola as well. So just wanted to give a brief introduction there. And as Carl mentioned, we'll have plenty of time at the end to field some questions. You know, whether it's about the topics we're covering today, or even if there's some other things that we can kind of help address through the course of the webinar today, we certainly want to do that. Today's session is going to be very focused on the 10.6 and 10.1 releases. Hopefully, a lot of you have had a chance up to this point to see some either literature or maybe another webinar about Macola 10 and how it can really help your business, especially if you're coming off progression or ES. There's just a lot of features and functionality that just flat out weren't there in previous versions of the application. So we'll do a little background on those pieces, but then the meat and potatoes of today is going to be focused on the cool new stuff that just came out in the past two releases. So, sorry about that. So just kind of a refresher for some of you on the modules of what Macola 10 includes, or really what makes up Macola 10. So Macola 10 is really your core ERP, what was traditionally the back office type of functions. All the functionality that you previously had in Synergy, so with CRM, document management, workflow management, and then taking that framework and really building on top of that. So it's really an all-inclusive ERP product. So I'm not going to read through all of these necessarily. You can kind of see the Macola 10 overview here. So it's everything from CRM there on the right-hand side through HR, all the normal finance type stuff. Nothing's been deprecated. In fact, you're getting more in those areas. Things around quality, distribution, project management tools, and then all the core manufacturing that the Macola line is really known for. So the 10 product has taken a lot of different modules, so to speak, and different functionality, and merged that into one really comprehensive product. And then again, on top of that, with each release, they're building on top of that functionality and coming out with just new ways to use the system, creative ways to use it, and also adding features and functions as we go along. So one of the big things that Macola 10 allows us to do is break down process flows that traditionally, even going back to progression and ES, or I doubt anyone on the call here is running a non-Macola ERP system, but even with those legacy type systems, there were still silos of data. There's still things that happen in access databases, outside processes that just naturally couldn't occur inside of the Macola ERP. What 10 really does for us is give us the tools to be able to get those processes back into the ERP. So we're not just talking about hammering in transactional data. We're talking about interactions and communications, both internally and externally. So in this kind of eye chart here, you'll see it's broken down by different departments. So we have our sales, support, purchasing, production, shipping, finance, and all the way to the CEO level. This has taken that quote to cash process, which traditionally, there's definitely going to be lots of pieces to that are going to happen externally. But again, not going to read every single line on here, but you can sort of see the flow all the way from entering a sales opportunity down to a quote becoming a sales order, all the way to the processing of the sales order, through materials requirements, to production, to shipping, all the way back around to providing key information for decision makers within the organization to be able to act on that transactional data. So it's taking transactional information, tying it to other sort of interactions within the business, and then being able to report back on that. Now, kind of a visualization of those issues is following. There's pieces of information all over the place. We're got things on paper, we've got siloed data and spreadsheets, we're making phone calls, we're sending emails, and really the focus of the Macola 10 product is to really streamline all of that into a cleaner, smoother, easier to use type of process. And again, getting all that transactional information, those interactions in one concise place that's accessible and transparent to everyone within the organization. So in this instance, it's taking all that sort of disparate chaos and putting it into order, using things like workflow to manage the CRM part of the application, using the business activity monitoring to automatically send email notifications when an order has been placed, things of that nature, and then reporting back out on all of that at the end of the process. So that was a little refresher. Again, hopefully a lot of you have had a chance to see some other demos and read some information about 10. So that was just kind of the refresher on what the Macola 10 product line really is. So let's start talking a little bit about what the next generation of Macola is going to look like, and specifically some of the leaps that they've made with the 10.6 release. So if you've ever seen anything or read anything about 10, workspaces are one of the big tenets of the application, and that holds true today. So there's still the 42, I think it's actually probably up to closer to 50 out of the box workspaces. But one of the big things, and what we're really going to focus on today, is some of the brand new transactional screens. If you had a chance to go to Evolve last year, they showed some prototypes of the new order entry screens and some item inquiry screens. Well, we're really going to take kind of a deep dive into those today, because with the 10.6 and 10.6.1 releases, they've made huge improvements in those through just a usability standpoint, a functionality standpoint, and are really moving the product in new and exciting directions. And along with those brand new transactional screens is a new API model. We'll look at that, some of the documentation on that really briefly towards the end of the presentation today, and I won't get too too geeky and techy with it. I'll try not to nerd out too much with it. But with all of the new transactional screens that they've been putting together, there's a supporting API. So what that means from a from an algorithm consultative standpoint, or from your internal IT department, it really ramps up the time to get, or I should say scales down the time to getting integrations with outside systems done, doing customizations, really opening up Macola to much more easily talk to the outside world, so to speak, sort of creating this open architecture that allows us to integrate with other products way easier than we ever could in the past. And then along those trends, finally, they're really just looking at ways to get data out better, create better reporting, and generate easier access to data as well. So we'll go through kind of just an overview here of the highlights from some of the release notes, and then we'll jump into our demo. So what's new in 10.6 and 10.6.1? So again, the new design of the web-based order entry screen. It looks pretty significantly different than some previous iterations of it that you may have seen. A lot of time and energy has been spent into usability, making sure things are in the right place so that when people need to get information, it's easy to get to, making it easier to enter data quicker. So we'll definitely spend some time with that one today and step through that. They've also added a lot of functionality to that screen as well. So the first iteration of it, you could only put in a sales order, an O-type order. That's been expanded to quote type orders, I-type orders, and just a lot of other things needed to support those type of orders have been put in. So we're really seeing a lot more extended functionality in those areas as well, along with the ability to edit orders in different statuses too. So again, originally you could put an order in, and after that you had to go to the old legacy screen to make any changes to that. So that's changed. Things like being able to add a contact and a new delivery address on the fly, and you can also perform the select for billing action from the new order entry screen as well. Also made some changes to the order inquiry screen to make that easier to use, and we'll see some of those. And I mentioned that one earlier, the ability to create the I-type orders now. And just wanted to throw some of these on here. We're not necessarily going to look at these, but just to point out too that there are still being enhancements made to those traditional kind of core ERP functions as well. So it's not just all new screens and new ways to interact with the system. They're making key functional changes to some of the other screens and areas of the application as well. So for instance, there's been a change made with releasing of blanket orders, where you have a little more control over that as far as how the credit check happens on the release of those blanket orders. And then also, they've added support for Canadian bank account numbering. So not sure if this affects anyone on the call or not necessarily, but there was a limitation before on the number of characters on the bank account. So that posed some challenges for our friends up north. And then they have added some additional workspaces. One that we're going to specifically take a look at today is the order audit by order number. That's taken one of those legacy reports, the order audit trail, one of those old COBOL reports that traditionally was super hard to read, getting out your ruler and a highlighter and trying to go through it and figure out what the heck happened on an order. So there's been an effort, or there is an effort being made to again transition some of those legacy reports that aren't super conducive to getting information out of, and moving them into the modern framework to be able to see that in a new and better way. And then finally, they made some payroll enhancements, and the year-end updates for payroll were in the 10.6, or I'm sorry, the 10.6.1 release. And then for anyone that's using AS Import to move items from back office to front office. They've added some additional security checks in the XML export as well. All right, that's our boring part there. So we're going to jump right into doing some fun stuff here, unless there's any questions before we get started.
Not at this step.
Carl?
Not yet. Not at this step. Thank you, though.
Perfect. So what we're looking at here is my demo guy homepage in Macola 10. And again, in this session, we're not going to focus too heavily on the workspaces and some of the core tenets of ERP, and more specifically what's been added and changed with the 10.6 release. But for the purposes of a demonstration, I'm going to go in as my salesperson here. As you know, most things always start with sales and go from there. You'll see I still have my kind of clean workspace laid out here, so I can see my sales funnel and the sales opportunities that are making up each stage of that. I've got my workflow laid out here on the right, and the things that I need to follow up with. But I want to focus more on transactional type of thing today. So, let's say I'm in the office today and I'm sitting at my desk and I get a call from one of my customers, and they want to get a quote on one of our products. So I'm going to come over here to my inner quotation. So that's going to pop up here, and we'll full screen this so we can see it a little bit better here. So if you haven't had a chance to see one of the previous iterations of this, this is the brand new order entry screen, and built on brand new technology that's leveraging a lot of the components in 10, but really kind of taking the framework of the application into the future and the next generation, so to speak. So the first thing I'm going to be able to enter is my customer number here. So I can either type in the number just like I always could, or I can start typing in, and I'm going to get a progressive type ahead search. So as I type in the name of the customer, you'll see it starts to filter my list here. So I can select my customer, and immediately I'm going to get a lot of real-time information about this customer. So a lot of things defaulting in, but specifically, let's say right here, I want to see what their available credit is. So my bicycle stop here still has 1.8 million of available credit, so I don't think there's going to be any issues with quoting to these guys. But if I do want to see more detailed information, right here in line, I can say credit info, and this is going to pop up a nice little screen that gives me information about what their current AR balance is, if they have any current orders, open orders. Got some credit memos out there. So I can see a lot of detailed information, again, in the process of entering this quote about this particular customer. And then as I kind of go across the screen, you'll notice as I'm going to see right here my total number of lines. As I start building this order out, these accumulators at the top are going to give me a snapshot view of what the detail of this order looks like. Then as I scroll down some, come to my bill to, I do have the ability to edit and change this bill to information on the fly. And I also have the ability to pick a ship to. So I can either edit it manually and change the ship to information on the fly for this one particular quote, or I can also pick a delivery address from an existing address. So I can pick from one of these guys and select that, or, and this is something that was just recently added as well, I can add a new delivery address on the fly too. So let's say I come down and say new. This is going to let me on the fly during the quote entry or order entry process be able to create a brand new contact. And I'll pick an account manager here. So I can save that. And so if you used previous versions of the application, you may recall that in some of the previous web screens, there were some limitations around the ability to be able to add delivery addresses or contact contact people on the fly, and you kind of had to go out of your way a little bit to be able to create that data. So I'll finish my address here. Put some very basic information in. So, and you'll notice too on all the fields, you've got nice, easy drop downs to select from, and all of these are going to support the type ahead as well. So it becomes very easy then to select your information. I've got enough to save it. Change it to a active country. Okay, and then in this case, I'll go ahead and just select one of these existing guys. I was having some issues with my country code there. And that's going to update that ship to. So without having to jump around to different screens or anything like that. And then from a usability standpoint, as I'm continuing this quote, I can put the PO number in. If I have a project code, I can link that to a project, switch the location. You know, a lot of the things that we're used to being able to do on the traditional Macola order entry screen, but just kind of laid out in a way that flows more naturally than maybe in the past. And then as we get down to the bottom here, I can set any taxes. It's pulling my salesperson, but then if I do need to split that, I have the ability to split commission here as well. So I can distribute that across multiple salespeople. And then, again, kind of guiding me through the process, instead of jumping down to like a different section, I've completed all this header type information. So now I can say, okay, I want to add items. So this immediately takes me to the item entry portion, where again, I've got my progressive type ahead there. And we'll say we're going to order a couple of these and ship maybe 2. Yeah, we'll order 2. Now, let's say, for instance, I'm looking at this B caliper item here, my brake caliper, and I say, well, geez, I don't know if we've got any in stock. Here, let me go tell you what's going on with this particular item. So I'll pop back over to my main workspace real quick, and I can go to my item lookup. So, and this is another screen where there's been a lot of new enhancements and advanced functionality added to as well. So I'm going to look up my B caliper. Now you'll see that refreshes right away. And then as I'm coming across, I have the ability to say, do I want to see what I have available in all locations? Or maybe I need to filter down to just a specific location. So let's just see what's in our San Diego location here. Okay, well, I've got 999 on hand, 3 are allocated, so I've got 996 available. So in this instance, I know that I've got plenty available, and I can still see down here in the bottom section what I have per location as well. So all in all, you know, I've got 1,800 of these, so we're in good shape. But let's say I want to see a little bit more information about, you know, if I didn't have that available, what I do have to promise and when. So down here on the bottom, I can look at my available to promise tab, and this is going to build out so that I can kind of see then by date what I have available to promise someone based on the total requirements for that period, what replenishments are coming in, and then what my available to promise is as a result of that. Now you'll notice right here, this is grouped up on a monthly basis. Now let's say, for instance, that's too broad of a time fence for me. So I can come into my change options, And I now have the ability to say, okay, I actually want to use a different reporting calendar for this. So I'm going to switch to my weekly reporting calendar. You also have some other options through here to kind of decide, for lack of a better word, on how you want certain values to be calculated. So things like subtracting safety stock, including prior orders. You've got some flexibility around how available to promise is calculated for your organization, or even on a kind of person-by-person basis. So I can confirm this, and you'll see that now updates my planning period here to a weekly basis as opposed to a monthly basis. So, and while we're on the screen too, some of the other nice things I've done with this as well is if I want to see just some historical information around my item, you'll see here I can see my quantity sold, so period to date's 1, year to date's 1. Haven't done a whole lot with it up to this point. But maybe I say, well, geez, what's my cost with this? So I can do the drop down over here on the right, and this is going to let me add or remove metrics that are important to me. So I can add my cost dollars. You'll see that immediately adds the cost dollars for this item as well. So it's a lot of those same accumulator type values that that we're used to seeing, you know, on the multiple level item view screen, but in a much more interactive way of seeing those. And then I have some other options too, so I can see any open purchase orders that are out there for this item, and any open customer orders. And all of these screens utilize what the development team at Macola there refers to as infinite scrolling. So you'll see I just kind of scroll down and see the rest of my orders here. Gone are the navigation screens, or going from one page to another. This will kind of load in real time as I scroll down any additional orders in that list, so you're not leafing back and forth through different pages. So again, it's really focused around being able to get lots of information in one spot in an easy way. Then one quick note on the screen before we go back and finalize our quote, since we know we have plenty of inventory on this B caliper item, is this screen here does support multiple divisions as well. So if maybe I had looked at the 001 division here and we didn't have it there, but maybe we have a sister company that sells the same item, I'd be able to switch over to that other division and see information about that item at that division as well. So a lot of flexibility there too. So now that we know we've got plenty of that on hand to be able to sell, at this point we can add this item to the order, and you'll see that adds it down here at the bottom. So with each item that we add, that's just going to create or keep adding to this list down here and accumulating the total order. So let's also throw some bolts on this quote here. And we'll do 100 bolts. And we can add that to the order. So at this point, we can go ahead and submit this order. So you'll see up here at the top, it tells me that order 22, which quote number 22, has been created. So we'll drill right back into that. Now, you know, real life scenario, we're going to send the quote out. We're going to have the business process management automatically email the quote. Might sit on it for a couple weeks, come back, ask for revision. Might be some back and forth. But for the sake of the demonstration here, we're going to assume that that our contact at Bicycle Stop, old Charles Donahue there, said, hey, you know, I don't really have to think about it. We're good. Let's go ahead and put an order in for this quote. So now on quote 22, I have the ability then to go ahead and convert this quote to an order through my new screen here. So I'll click my convert. It's going to give me an option to back out and not convert it at this point, but I'll say, yeah, I want to go ahead and convert this. Okay. So kind of blew through the warning message there. That's just where I had previously used a PO number of PO number on another order. But it went ahead and converted for us because I just blew through the warning message there. So now we have an actual sales order that's ready to be processed through the system, just like you're used to doing today. So that's, excuse me, that's 134. So let's kind of look at this from a different direction now. So I'm done on the sales side here. I've got my order in. I've kind of washed my hands of it at this point and said, okay, it's ready to go over to fulfillment, however your processes work. So I'm going to log off with my sales guy. And I'm going to go ahead and log back in as my shipping person here. So in this case, our order's out, like I said, ready to be processed through. We could always go back in, edit that order, make changes to it since it's just in a book status right now. But we're going to jump a little bit ahead in the process here. And we're going to say, okay, well, this is ready to be sent out for fulfillment. So my order here, go ahead and print my pick ticket. So wait for just the standard pick ticket to come up here. Not necessarily anything has changed with this, but just want to show how this affects the interaction and real-time view into the orders as well. So I've generated my picking ticket. So now let's go back in and pull that order back up. So from here, I'm going to go into my order inquiry screen. And this is going to let me do either a detailed search for a list of orders, so maybe by a customer. So you'll see I have the ability to search by a customer number, a certain PO number, even a ship to, or a range of order dates or a range of invoice dates. So this replaces, for all intents and purposes, a multitude of other views in the legacy system. So, if we're looking at like progression or Macola 10.6, this screen alone gets rid of a lot of the power inquiries, the order entry history view, just consolidates, again, information into one place. So for instance, if I look up a customer 906, I'm going to get a list of everything, and I can switch between open orders, historical orders, just with a radio button here. And then I see all that information at the bottom as well and can drill down into any of those orders. So, I could have searched by a specific order or had my workspace, pass that order number in as well. But we wanted to kind of show the flexibility of the order inquiry here. So I can drill down into that sales order that we entered. So you'll notice here at the top, there's a progressive status. So based on what status the order is in, it's actually going to keep this updated. So anybody can pull this order up and see that, okay, it was booked, pick tickets printed. So the next step in my organization here is to bill it. So understanding that maybe the person doing the shipping isn't always going to be the person billing, so you have to kind of bear with me on this example and use your imagination some. But we can go ahead and actually perform the select for billing activity from the sales order here now. So I can click on my bill, and this is going to open the sales order back up here and allow me to review it for accuracy. So I can make changes here still on the main screen. So if I want to change it to a different ship via, if I need to change the terms, maybe the cost unit, cost center need updated, I kind of have a last ability to do that here. Now next I'm going to go through and review my items. So instead of the concept of doing like select all for billing or select certain and going down into the lines and checking those on, I now can do it in a much more visual type of manner. So you'll see here I've got checkboxes where I can select which lines I'm actually billing. Now, if I had a very large order, I could also, filter those down by ship date here. So if I wanted to only see a subset of those and select those. And then I also have the ability to unselect or select en masse as well. So again, in just a much more visual, much more interactive type of way to be able to, to do our billing in this case. Now I can submit this. So, and you'll see now it immediately updated. Select for billing on 123 here. And then as this goes through the rest of the process and is invoiced and posted, each one of those little boxes is going to light up as well. So I can easily see where an order is at any given time without remembering, what a status 1 or a status 4 or 8 or 9 is. And I'm sure everyone's very familiar with those number codes. But you'll see too at the top here, I get a very quick insight into what's going on with this order as well. So, I've got 2 lines. Here's my sales total. If I had a freight tax, I'd see that as well. And I just see the total on this order very quickly and easily as well. So now that we've printed our pick ticket, conceivably ship that out and build that order, let's look at auditing that order as well. So this is another new feature that was recently added in. So I'm going to log off from my shipping person, and then I'm going to log in to my finance person. So let's say there was a problem with that order. Somebody called in with a question, and we've all been there where it pops up with, what the heck happened? Why did this change? Who changed it? Why did they change it? I need to find out so I can go yell at them or have a good talking to type of conversation. And frankly, the reports to be able to do that historically have been challenging to read at best. So again, with an effort on being able to get data back out of Macola in a much more easier manner, one of the things they've added is the sales order audit. Now this one frankly, it'll run a little bit slow because there's a lot of information for it to churn through here. But I'm going to do that order that we just put in. So I'm Marilyn, our finance person. I'm trying to figure out, why we sold the B caliper, who put this order in. So you'll see now I've got a much more concise view into what actually happened with this. So it's broken up into types of actions. So here's my order 134. I see all that header information, and then it starts breaking it down into what changed. So we see on this date, I'm the user, and it was a booked order, and now it's a pick ticket printed. Then it went from pick ticket printed to selected. Then we get down into the line item section, and we just have 2 add records. But it very distinctly breaks up what happened and then what changed and when. So this is one, at the end of the day, it's a workspace, a report type workspace. But little things like this, definitely make day-to-day use of the application much easier just to get your job done, quite frankly. And things like this is what there's been a focus on as well with Macola to really help, not just kind of the flashy, here's the new order entry screen, we can do great things with that, but nuts and bolts type of things like this too that just make that day-to-day ease of use that much better. Now, one of the final things I want to look at is I want to circle back around to our sales guy there, and let's say today he's not at his, he's not at his desk. He's out traveling around, and he stopped for lunch and got an email from Charles asking about the status of the order that we put in. So he's going to pull out his mobile phone here. So let me connect my mobile here real quick. So our sales guy is going to be able to log in, and you'll see here, this is just an example. I'll pop over here. He's going to be able to log into the system. Oh, I apologize, it went to sleep on me here. So I try not to remember my password. So he says, oh, okay, do you have your order number? Yeah, it was order number 134. Well, let me pull that up real quick, and I can show you, or I'll find out here real quick what the status of this is. And we say, oh, well, Charles, it looks like your order has been selected for billing, so it should be on its way to you. And let's see, the total was 170.75. Yep, let's come down. It looks like, yep, all the items shipped on it. Everything went out. They shipped out today, so hopefully they should show up there, by the end of the week for you. So it's very easy to get the same information that we were just looking at, on the desktop on a mobile device. Now, one thing you might notice with this as well is that I'm not in a native app. So one of the big focuses on the new development that Macola has been doing is somewhat getting away from native apps. Now, we still have the CRM app, which is a great tool, got lots of folks using it. There's still lots of development going on with that, but specifically with these new Macola screens, the focus is on what they call responsive elements and responsive design. So the same screen can be used on my iPhone, that can be used on an iPad, that can be used on the desktop, and it's scalable to all of those and easy to see. I have the same ability from here then. If I want to create a new quote or a new order, I can go in and do that. The item snapshot works the same as well. So I can, all those things that we did at the first part of the session on the desktop, I can do all of those same activities right from my mobile device as well, and in a very easy manner. So, if I want to look up an item like we did earlier and see what's available to promise, I can do that as well and see what my quantities are. So same stuff we were looking at before, just laid out to fit on my screen here. And you'll even notice my metrics here carried over. So that's, because it's web-based, it's not machine specific. It's specific to my user. So just a huge focus on accessibility and getting real-time information in multiple ways from multiple places. Turn off reflector here real quick. And then the very last thing I want to touch on is all the screens we're looking at today, and this is going to be my geek out part of the session. There's associated APIs. So without throwing too many acronyms around, they're based on REST web services, which is a programmer way to be able to link Macola data to an outside application. And along with that is this API documentation. So if you have someone in your organization that knows a little bit of coding, and you want to integrate, say, with a product lifecycle management system, there's tons of systems that Macola fits naturally with that are kind of parallel to ERP and CRM and things that Macola focuses on. And this is really a great way to integrate into those systems without creating everything from scratch. And the developers have done a really great job of documenting this out as well. So when you come to the API documentation now, you just click on a header, and it'll show you the get, post, put. It'll show you all the different commands that are available. And then if you click on that, it's going to give you all the different values that are available, and then an example of how you would utilize this particular REST object in your code. And you'll see down here at the bottom, it tells you everything from the value, what the parameter is, a description of it, all of that. So if you're not a programmer, which I'm not, this is a little outside of, wheelhouse maybe, but if you've got somebody that knows a little programming, they've done a lot with this and really fleshing this out and creating a modern, easy to use API. So this is something that we're very excited about as well. So as Carl mentioned at the beginning of the session, we wanted to leave 10-15 minutes here at the end for questions. Those are the big pieces that they've added to 10.6, but what's very exciting is there's still constant development in all those areas, and we're starting to see a lot more momentum, so to speak. So certain things like to be able to support the billing process and order entry, that requires doing an inventory transaction. So now that inventory transaction's done, if you think of it sort of as Legos, the development team at Macola there is creating these Lego pieces, and with each Lego, that just makes it easier to build out the next screen and the next function, and then has this really great foundation. So I'm very excited to see what gets announced around Evolve this year. So hopefully we'll see a lot of you guys at Evolve and hear what Macola is coming out with next, and then the next iterations of the application are very exciting. So with that, I'll thank you guys for listening to me go on today, and I'll turn it over to Carl here to see if we had any questions come through.
Yes, thank you, Dave. It was awesome. I really appreciate you on that presentation. We do have several, so I was trying to queue these in the order in which they came in, and some of them tie back to the OE screen, some tie back to the specific things that you were doing within building the order, so we'll try to go through these in an ordered way. But first, more as a general question, I guess we have some folks that are curious as to, as they're planning their migration or update to 10.6.1, just your high level around best practices or things that you think were experiences that you were presented with that you might be able to suss out for the group to learn from in terms of them updating their own versions, if they're updating them themselves, and if they're requiring help from a business partner, we'd be happy to assist them with that. But just some of those best practice items that you had on top of your mind from moving us to 10.6.1.
Okay, yeah, and really to do that question justice, I'll start off with saying it really does kind of depend in what version you're coming from. So if you're coming from a more recent version of 10, so let's say 10.5 or even 10.4, I think internally at Algo we went from 10.4.3 to 10.6.1. So with that, frankly, this is another area that Macola has done a good job in of making those sort of updates pretty seamless. We really didn't have to do much preparation at all. It's really just pulling down the installer and running the update and going from there. You can get it done in a couple hours, and then it's business as usual. Now with that in mind, though, and some of the things we're seeing today, that's when you kind of want to start to ask, okay, does it make sense to start folding in some of the new features that Macola is rolling out? So like the order entry screen, for instance, or does it make sense to maybe hold on and focus more on developing workspaces and then rolling in some of that functionality? So it really does kind of depend, but from an update standpoint, they've made it super easy to update. Now, if you're more upgrading and coming from ES or from progression, that's really more a project-focused type of upgrade. And then, there's a lot of opportunity in something like that to do a full discovery and really understand and plan out how, this huge new tool set that you have is going to be able to impact the functional areas within your business. So I know that was a little bit of a squishy answer, but it really does kind of depend on where you're at right now and where you're trying to get to. But as Carl said, you know, it's something we're happy to help you work through and make those decisions.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, this is great. We're getting more to come in, so we're going to try and handle as many of these as we can in the 10 minutes or so left. And then if anything needs to be tabled or is more nuanced to be able to answer during this time, we'll follow up as a sales team to make sure you get an answer. Secondly, question was related to the OE screen itself. So there's a lot of interest in this screen.
Okay.
And obviously our audience is familiar with modifying and customizing order entry screens and the legacy Macola or the client server-based world. What exists, or how are the screens customized in this web or new interface? And are they out-of-the-box customizations, or do they require a level of acumen and technology that somebody would need, like Flex, the ability to do so?
So I will say, without having a direct line to the Macola development team necessarily, you know, Algorithm has a great relationship with Macola, so I don't necessarily want to speak out of turn on this, but I will say from the knowledge I do have with it, right now, customizing these screens would be pretty challenging. So there's not something to the effect of like a Flex or you know, screen designer like you were used to previously with those screens. So to actually modify these as they are today, you'll need to know a little bit of code to be able to do that. Now, I do know that one thing they have on the horizon is this creation of what is referred to as a plug-in architecture, which, you know, a lot of softwares outside of Macola even are using today, where essentially you have the ability then to hook in your custom code, so to speak, at any certain action point on the screen. So if it's maybe after you lose focus on the customer number, you want something to happen. So similar to Flex, but with a different model. Now that's a little bit down the road. So frankly, as it stands today, if the order entry screen here, you know, doesn't cover most of what you need to cover, then that's a discussion, you know, I think you want to sit down with, you know, with either us or whoever you're working with and talk through, you know, does it make sense to start using it today, or we have this big custom Flex program that we need as well to transition, so maybe wait a little bit until that plugin architecture is finished. So I guess to make a short question long, like I did, the answer is today to customize these, you'd be talking about actually like customizing the pages themselves, and with the rapidness that they're developing these, I do think that would pose some challenges.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. So similar along the lines of that OE screen, one question was asked, while a salesperson is building an order, while somebody is building an OE order, can the customer order history be presented on that same screen while they're building that order for them to be able to kind of reference back to, or would that be building up a separate workspace?
That would be kind of building up a separate workspace. So in that specific instance, I would really suggest, you know, building a workspace around that information that's needed, and then, you know, you'd be able to pop up the order entry screen, but you'd basically be doing that from the workspace, so you'd have all that history information on the workspace. So it wouldn't necessarily be on the same screen, but it would be kind of side by side. But that's how I approach that.
Gotcha. And obviously within this order entry screen, what you presented today is using your login, and the material that you view or see on there is based on your security rights. Are there ways to hide or mask fields or areas on that screen based on security, or is it all what you see, what you get based on a user license?
Today, it's a what you see, what you get with the screens as they are right now. So there is a function, or I'm sorry, there is a role that gets assigned to be able to view any one of the particular screens. But once you have the view rights to it, then you're able to see everything on that screen. So I think that security model is something that we'll see evolve in the future as well.
That's a good question then, because I just kind of assumed, built based on historical Macola's actions, that you'd be able to kind of mask or flag those things, but wanted to ask, so that was a great question.
Yeah.
Do you have just another question related to starting an order, building out an order from scratch? Are there ways to piggyback on or use an existing order as a baseline and starting from that as a template, or do you have to input these from scratch each time?
You should actually be, if I do a new one here. Well, maybe not. Sorry about that. Let me stay on this. I'm sorry, I was actually taking another screen. So I think on this screen right now, there's not a copy from history. For a second, I had to check here because my brain was thinking of the other screen. So I think on these, yeah, there's not a copy from history or from master order.
From master order, okay.
Yeah.
And there's some more nuances related to kind of auto-defaulting within a specific order as you're building it. There were fields as you were, if you go back in the Wayback Machine, as you were adding kind of an address, and those asterisk fields were demarcated as required. Can you fast track that by making one of those asterisk fields defaulted to a certain ship to or ship from or warehouse location? And is that
so a lot of those? Yeah, so a lot of those are going to default on the order. So like the second that I pull in this case, like bicycle stop, and then if I pick a specific ship to, that's going to default, all the appropriate information in, like the warehouse and tax codes and things, to the order. Now, what you're not able to default, and this is kind of the nature of existing legacy Macola as well, is if I'm setting up new master data. So I think probably the closest example was like setting up the new delivery address. So on that, I'm not able to default in like US or things of that nature on the master data, but then all of that defaults over to the transactional data on the sales order.
Oh, cool. So we have about 2 minutes left, so we have a few more questions, and we apologize if we're not able to get to all these. We'll certainly get a response back to you from your account manager team, so myself or Jeff Jenkins or Eva James or Steve Calderonello. So we appreciate you guys with your participation on this and engagement. Real quick, high level, any changes in these OE screens resulting in database table changes or background process changes that someone needs to be privy to?
No, that's actually one thing that's been really nice through the course of them creating all these new screens. So the order entry one, for example, there's not any major database changes. There's not new tables. So I could even theoretically, I could have one set of users entering sales orders through this new screen, and I could have another set entering them through the legacy screen, and all the orders would process through the same.
Gotcha. Okay. And this is one last question, just for the respect of everybody's time. There was a question related to how does this process work with an OE to PO process, an OE to PO function, which you showed was kind of an order to billing or cash, and would that change if you're doing an order to PO? And then also separately, it's a two-parter. When you change a ship to address on the fly, how is the system managing that back-end synchronization to Synergy? Is it establishing a new account code, or is it linking it to that specific account code?
Okay, so we'll answer that one in two parts. So as of today, I don't believe that OE to PO is supported yet. There is in the documentation. They do have a nice matrix around what's supported and not supported. Now, like production order pull is supported, for instance, but then OE to PO isn't supported yet, and part of that is because that function would also require the generation of a PO. So I think that's an instance where we'll see like OE to PO being supported probably right before they come out with a comparable purchase order screen, for instance, as that function gets completed. Again, kind of going back to that Lego thought process of building those pieces together. So unfortunately, that's not supported today. The second part of that question, so if I'm adding a contact and an account, then that's going to basically mimic if I were to go in and create a contact and a delivery address today. So taking that existing account, so in this case my bicycle stop, and creating the contact on that and the associated delivery address in the addresses table for the existing customer is how that would look after I completed it.
Interesting. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you. In the sake of respecting everybody's time, I think we want to call it right there. We're just a minute over. So really appreciate your time, Dave, and your insights on this. This looks really cool. I hope everyone else has felt the same. We value that you were able to participate today. I do want to go ahead and say again, at the end of this, there'll be a brief survey. It should take less than 5 minutes, but we just use that as a means to help our programming advance and add value to people who are viewing these webinars. So we appreciate if you could take time to review and answer those. And then this will be recorded, so we'll get a recording link out to the folks who participated and who weren't able to attend, but appreciate everybody joining today. I don't know if you have anything else, Dave, but
Nope. Just want to again reiterate what you said and thank everyone for your time today. And yeah, I think Carl will just pull out those questions and we'll go through them together and make sure that no question goes unanswered.
All right, perfect. Well, really appreciate everybody's time. Have a great afternoon and rest of the week. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.